Father Spitzer, could you please explain the nature of transubstantiation? Now, there's a word that we don't really hear that much about anymore. Transubstantiation. How would we explain this to a materialist, since there is no evidence of molecular change? Okay, so I guess the first idea is, what do we mean by that? And then how do you conquer or take on that question about why I should believe if there's no molecular change?
Transubstantiation, in order to understand it, you have to get a hold on some Aristotelian terms that were very well known in the Middle Ages by, for example, St. Thomas Aquinas. But today, they are less known. So you're going to have to take some time with your materialist friend to explain these Aristotelian terms. But let's just quickly go into it. In that word, transubstantiation, is the word substance. And substance has a very particular meaning in Aristotelian physics. And we'll call them substance versus accidents. Okay, and the substance is the underlying reality of a thing. The accidents are all of the various characteristics that control the way in which something appears, how it appears to you and manifests itself in the material world. Now, so when we say transubstantiation, what we're saying is the substance has been transformed. But we are not saying that the accidents have been transformed. So that all of the things that give rise in our material world to an appearance, for example, atomic, subatomic, molecular, and other constructs or what we might call governing activities that sort of shape the appearance around the substance, those things don't change. So for example, if you were to look at a host right under a microscope, you would still see molecules that constitute bread. And if you broke it down even further into atomic constituents, you would see various kinds of carbon compounds and carbon bondings, right? It would be the same kinds of things. And if you could look at it with an electron microscope, you'd still see the same electron, proton, well, you wouldn't see electron, because you can't see electrons because you're using electrons to see it, but you'd still see, the kinds of atomic constituents that actually constitute the host. So that is not going to change. And so what the church is not saying that you're going to have any change in physical appearance or in any of the laws or characteristics that constitute a physical appearance of bread. None of that is going to change. But what we do hold is that there is something more than physical appearance. What we hold is that there is an underlying reality. And of course, the underlying reality can be shaped by a physical appearance. So normally we would call that underlying reality, number one, we would call it being, which is, and we use the word esse here, which means, of course, the act of existing for St. Thomas Aquinas. So that would be part of the substance of the host. However, it's not just the existing, the act of existing, but it's the act of existing. Is it fundamentally spiritual, or is it fundamentally real? Fundamentally material. And we say, oh, it's fundamentally material being. But after the transubstantiation, it now becomes fundamentally a spiritual reality, a spiritual being. Nevertheless, The accidents, and accidents are not like anything like what we mean by accidents today. You know, some kind of a coincidence that, you know, can a happenstance or something of that nature. What we mean, what is meant by an accident is something which is not determinative of the essential nature of the being. Now, the essential nature of the being after the consecration is a spiritual being. And of course, the spiritual being is the body of Christ. That's its essential nature. Its non-essential characteristics, which control its physical appearance, would still be carbon atoms and you know, the molecular constructs needed and bondings needed for bread and so forth. But that's only the part of the reality, as it were, the part of the physical being that governs its appearance to us in a material world, governs its presence in the material world. But essentially, its reality has changed from a material one to a spiritual one, namely the very risen and crucified body of Jesus conjoined together in his personal reality, present in the bread. So that has become the new reality. So yeah, now you say, well, how do I explain that to a materialist?
Right.
Boy, I'll tell you, you'd have to take them, honestly, you'd have to give them a mini course in Thomistic metaphysics, to be honest with you. And so, you know, I have an article where I have explained this in some detail, you know, with a little mini course in Aristotelian Thomistic metaphysics, a little article on transubstantiation and its distinction from consubstantiation and so forth. If you want that, give your email to EWTN, and I will have my secretary mail that to you.